gonna, as a gesture to those of you who are on time, we're gonna start on time. And undoubtedly, people will come in and they'll be welcome, but let's hit the road. So I'm Kate DeWitt. I'm with the Kensington Historical Society. Welcome and thank you. And early on in January, we talked about our theme for the speaker programs for this year. And not only is the U.S. celebrating 250 years, but so is Montgomery County. So we thought, yay, let's focus on Montgomery County and look at it different ways. So we have done that, and those of us who talk about speaker planning have been pretty excited to have Brian here because we think it's going to be fun. And, you know, we can study and learn about Montgomery history in a little more serious way, but I think this is going to be more fun facts, interesting things we didn't know, connect the dots and whatnot. So been looking forward to this. So he's going to describe a little bit. I asked him earlier, he's got a very eclectic array of skills and interests, and a fairly recent University of Maryland grad in business and tech operations. So he's got that kind of a gearhead. He also majored in information systems marketing and studied screenwriting at school. And then this is his second book, actually. His first one was History of Gaithersburg. So he's like cranking it out. And first thing I asked him to do is just talk a little bit about his background and how he got interested. I'm always fascinated at curious people who really do pursue what interests them. Instead of just saying, oh, isn't that interesting? They go at it. So he's going to talk to us about that and then tell us more about the county. And hold your questions if you can until afterwards. We'll have a Q&A, and refreshments will also be there. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Kate. Thank you, Kate, again. A little bit about me. I am Brian Myers. I'm a native of Gaithersburg, Wooten High School class of 2019, UMD class of 2023. I've written 2 local history books, one on the city of Gaithersburg in 2020, and my most recent, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about today, Hidden History of Montgomery County, Maryland. And so how I got into it, like she said, I have a tech background, but ever since I was 11 years old, I've loved family history. I used to go through my grandparents' family history books. Like whenever we go over for a family reunion, I would just go to a giant, like 30-year-old binder on my grandparents' bookshelf, and then go to that, even though it was probably, you know, weighed half as much as I did at the time. And so I eventually got into Ancestry.com when I was 11 years old, with parents' permission, of course. And I started realizing that my dad had a lot of family connections around here. Is anybody here from the Gaithersburg area or up that way? No? Well, that's okay. I wouldn't expect you guys to come down during the rush hour anyway. It's brutal out there, let me tell you. But anyway, my dad, I realized a lot of his family names were related to like places like Shefali Square Road, which is a very long Swiss last name that's over in the Kentlands. So I always drove by it as a kid. I never really knew the connection there, and then I realized that it was named after my dad's great uncle's family, and he didn't know it himself. He's from Ellicott City. He thought his relatives were from Frederick County, and he didn't even know that he had a great uncle who moved from Frederick County, triangulated down to Gaithersburg, and lived on the property where Smoky Glen Farm is now, if anybody knows where that is. Yeah, and I had my graduation, I had my senior picnic there. Didn't even know it was related to my family. So I started finding little tidbits like that, and eventually that's how I started getting into the book. And so it's led to a lot of really great opportunities. Obviously getting to speak with all of you. Thank you so much in advance for coming out here. And it's also, you know, like from one of my Gaithersburg talks, Someone was impressed enough by that they came to me and said, hey, we really think you would be great working for our city's historic district commission, where I look over the older properties and make sure that they're up to code and keeping with the historic spirit, keeping up with the historic materials and making sure that everything looks in faith with the historic districts that we have in our community. So I'm very honored to be serving that role. It's a fairly recent one. Again, it's all because of you all and your support for the book. So without further ado, for those of you who are new here, I am going to go through and just talk a little bit more about Montgomery County. Are you guys ready? Yeah. All right, sounds good. Okay, so I have this image here. We're going to start kind of toward the beginning. This is about 19 years after Montgomery County was established. Just a time check here. Okay, 709. All right, so this is called the Griffith map of Montgomery County, Maryland. And you can kind of see toward the middle, if you live in the Gaithersburg-Rockville area, there's Montgomery Courthouse. It's marked as Montgomery CH, right by the U in Montgomery County. That is where Rockville is now, and that's where the founders of Montgomery County met and decided to incorporate Montgomery County. It was once a part of Frederick County and once a part of Prince George's County. And then on September 6, 1776, they met in Rockville at that mark on there, and they incorporated the whole county for us. And then if you go up into like the northern parts of the county, there's Sugarloaf on there, Sugarloaf Mountain, and there's Bennett's Creek, like Little Bennett Regional Park, and then Jeremiah Crabs. So there's J.E.R. Crabs kind of toward the middle. You'll notice that he's up there because he was a landowner there. He actually was a general under George Washington, was really good for morale. So Jeremiah Crabb, he was a U.S. representative and was also known for being with George Washington at Valley Forge. And George Washington was so impressed by his leadership and keeping morale up at Valley Forge that he actually promoted him personally to general. And then he came back to his home in the Rockville-Durwood area, and he eventually became a congressional representative for Maryland in actually about 1795. And there's a small branch there called Crabs Branch. If you go by the Shady Grove Metro, there's a road called Crabs Branch Way, and he and his family are actually, the road, but he and his family are actually buried right on the side of that road, kind of by where Indianola Drive goes over the train tracks, where all those car dealerships are. So I thought that was pretty cool to learn. Yeah, and then you got some other cool places on there as well. You can even see Great Falls and Little Monocacy. All right, so I'm going to move ahead. All right, so this is 1888. You start to see a little bit more of the places on here. So highlighted there, I put a little community called Knowles Station Post Office. And if you travel through Kensington a lot, I'm sure you've seen Knowles Avenue, Route 547. So when that metropolitan branch of the Baltimore Railroad came through in 1873, so George Knowles was the name of the man who owned the property where the train station was set up. So Knowles Station was established on his land and named after him. And one thing I found that was really interesting was his sister-in-law is known in another chapter of my book for living in Rockville, and during the Civil War, General J.E.B. Stuart from the Confederacy came through and actually raided and marched through Rockville, and actually came to her door and demanded to see her husband because he was a notorious protester of the Confederacy in a border state. And so she just flat out refused. He was hiding off at another location, but she flat out refused to let him see him. And so she later wrote that it must have been so impressive that she just that he just left and told his men, if any of you harm her, you're going to be in a world of trouble, even though they were on opposite sides. So yeah, I thought that was cool. There's a little bit of connection between what is now Kensington and that story up in Rockville. All right, so moving ahead. Oh, and one more thing I wanted to point out. Orndorff Mill Road there. I mean, you can see a lot of these cool roads here. There's Offutt's Cross Road, which is now Potomac. It was named after the Offutt family. Orndorff Mill Road, that is a precursor to Democracy Boulevard. And actually, the Orndorffs originally owned Bell's Mill, if you know Bell's Mill Road, and then it was handed off to the Bell family. And that mill, Bell's Mill, was actually destroyed by the Johnstown flood of 1889. It's actually affected a lot down here as well. All right, and now we're getting a little bit more familiar. So we have Brainerd Warner. I'm sure you've seen roads around here. You've seen Brainerd Ave. You've seen Warner Ave just down the street from us. So he is a developer from Pennsylvania who came and named and founded Kensington in 1894. And this was based off of a trip that he took to London in the year 1890. And he was so impressed by it that when he was developing the land here, he said, you know what, I want to make it exactly like my trip. And one of the places he saw on his trip was Kensington Gardens, which is right outside the Kensington Palace, you know, where Prince William and Princess Kate currently live. And there was actually a Peter Pan prequel book that was based there, which I didn't realize. But yeah, so he named and pushed for the new incorporators to name it after Kensington. Another thing about him, he ran unsuccessfully for Congress in 1907. It was very well politically connected. He was an associate of both Presidents McKinley and Taft. And President McKinley appointed his son Brainerd Jr. as consul to Leipzig, Germany, back in 1898. And you might recognize his name, Warner Memorial Presbyterian Church. He built that one in honor of his father. And he also, Town Hall, right here where we are. He also funded that. And his home is Hadley Hall, and that's located at 10231 Carroll Place. Some other fun facts about him. He initiated funding for the 4 Carnegie Public Libraries in D.C. by reaching out to Andrew Carnegie, the famous billionaire. The first Carnegie Library was built in Mount Vernon Place in D.C. in 1903, and it was actually the first desegregated building in Washington, D.C. And speaking of libraries, moving on to the Noyes Children's Library. So this is one of Brainerd Warner's associates, a man named Crosby Noyes. Now, Crosby Noyes was the publisher of the Evening Star newspaper. He came from a humble background in Minot, Maine, and made his way all the way down to D.C. And so he loved books as virtue of working for the Evening Star for many years. And in the later part of his life, when he was almost 70 years old, he co-founded the Noyes Library in 1893 with Warner. And so Warner, being the developer that he is, and also a lover of books and knowledge and education, he donated the land, and Noyes stocked a lot of the books that he reviewed in the Washington Star. And so for many years, it acted as a community center for Kensington residents. I don't know if did anybody get to go to it before it closed and went to the children's library? All right, there we go. Did you enjoy your time there when it was? I studied every day there. Awesome, we love to hear it. All right. Yeah, so it acted as a community center for Kensington residents, like our fellow visitor in the front row. It closed in the late 1960s, but it reopened in 1972 as a children's library due to local protests. And then in 1991, it was saved from closure again when the county tried to cut funding, and the community again said, we're not doing that, no. So I'm trying to see what we have here. Oh, yes, it was also one of the first of 9 Montgomery County public libraries in 1951. And unfortunately, the reason that it was first closed is because it was merged with the Garrett Park and Rocking Horse libraries, also in the area. But thankfully, now it's still here as a children's library. Some other facts I have here. Some members who ran the library, they had to be at least 16 years old when it opened. This was back in the 1890s. They had to be at least 16 years old, of, quote, good moral character, live in Montgomery County, and they had to pay a whopping annual fee of $1 per year. Yeah, so there's good ones there. Oh, I got a fun next one. Okay. All right. So you got, I told you it was going to be a fun presentation. All right, so not Kensington anymore. We're moving a little bit northwest of here to Garrett Park. So I'm going to talk about a toilet today. I'm sure you all are familiar. In 1898, there was a new Garrett Park resident. Her name was Grace Sprigg. She was a new mother, newly married, 19-year-old. She was actually a cornstarch heiress. Her father was head of a cornstarch company back in New York. And she decided that when she moved into town, that she would install a brand new fancy septic tank, a precursor to modern plumbing. And the neighbors feared, because they were used to, having outhouses, they feared that her privy was going to be too close to their well water and it was going to leach into the water and cause germs to collect there. And then when they consume it, they would get, diseases like dysentery, cholera, or typhoid fever. There had recently been an epidemic of typhoid fever up in Philadelphia. So they saw that in the newspaper and they did not want to become the next Philadelphia. So what did they do? They actually voted to incorporate their town. A town was caused just because they were afraid of their neighbor's new toilet, which is insane to me, but also fantastic. So they incorporated, and then the first thing that they did when they incorporated was, oh, well, now that we're a town, we can, vote on stuff. How about that lady's toilet down the street? Let's get that. Let's get rid of that. So Grace Sprigg, she refused to comply. So the newly formed town government actually came by and disconnected her pipes. And she fought back legally and ended up losing. And only 2 years later, her family moved back to New York in 1900. And yeah, this is the Garrett Park that we have today. It's still there, Oh gosh, it's probably in a local museum somewhere, unfortunately. Haven't gotten to see it. Always a fun one. So this is another local one. So Miss Reinhardt School for the Deaf Children. I did not know that we had a deaf school in the area. I knew about the one up in Frederick, but I didn't know that we had one down here in Kensington. This is Annie Reinhardt School for the Deaf Children. Now, she was a woman from Philadelphia, daughter of German immigrants. She was also from humble beginnings. She worked as a candy counter girl. She worked in a confectionery shop. And she learned how to educate deaf children with lip reading. So not necessarily sign language, but actually reading lips. And so she started out her career in Philadelphia and then eventually came down to Kensington and started her school in 1908. Now, over the course of her career, she made a very famous connection. I don't know if y'all, so that's Annie on the left. If you recognize the man on the right, that is Alexander Graham Bell. And so he actually, and this is another really cool thing, I did not realize how much of a connection he had to our area. So believe it or not, Alexander Graham Bell, he had a daughter named Elsie Bell, and Elsie Bell was married to the first full-time editor of National Geographic magazine, and his name was Gilbert Grosvenor. Now, I don't know if you recognize the name, Grosvenor Lane, or Grosvenor Strathmore, the metro station. That's who it's named after. He had property right over by Grosvenor Lane and 355. So he did have a family connection to the Grosvenors. And his wife was actually deaf. I didn't realize that was why he got into hearing technology. That was one of the many reasons, because in addition to inventing the telephone, he also invented a wide range of hearing aids over the course of his life. And so getting back to Annie, she educated deaf children in lip reading from 1908 to 1935. Up until 1920, she was up at the corner of St. Paul and Metropolitan Avenues, right across the railroad tracks. And then in the early 1920s, she moved right down here, like right around where Reinhardt Park is, to Armory Avenue, Armory and Warner Avenues. And originally, the dedication speech was going to be given by Alexander Graham Bell's wife, who was deaf herself. Unfortunately, she was unable to attend because she was very sick at the time. So they actually recruited Grace Goodhue Coolidge, Calvin Coolidge's wife, President Calvin Coolidge's wife, because, and this is another one that I didn't know, she was actually a deaf educator when she met Calvin Coolidge. They were both living in Northampton, Massachusetts, and he met her when she was teaching at a deaf school. Yeah, she gave the dedication for this building that used to be located, right down the street from us. Another cool, fun piece that I found here. This came on Ancestry.com from her great nephew, which just happens to have the same name. Usually gets shaken up and the last names change. Yeah, I just thought that was a little fun quirk. But yeah, I don't know. He just had a bunch of these pictures on his Ancestry account. I asked if I could use them, and I've looked around and I haven't really seen a lot of pictures of her with Alexander Graham Bell everywhere else or anywhere else. So yeah, it just goes to show, Ancestry.com. It's been a great resource for me and a great resource for researching the book as well. All right, so now we have Representative Fred Zillman. He was a congressional representative for Maryland, lived in Silver Spring, right off of Colesville Road, and served from 1917 to 1931. And he was the only Marylander in the House of Representatives to vote in favor of the Dyer anti-lynching bill in 1922. And I'll get to more context behind that in a second. Some more of a rundown for him. He was formally accused of mail fraud and bribery in 1929. Never tried for these crimes, but he lost re-election in 1931, probably due to the scandal. And then he moved to Cumberland, Maryland, where he fell victim to and this is where it gets really interesting for me, because I'm really interested in, like the weird, rare diseases. He actually passed away from the mysterious sleeping sickness. And this was an epidemic started at the end of World War I, where people would suddenly get hypersomnia, where they would just fall asleep for very long periods of time. They would start getting tremors. They would suddenly go into fits of unrest. They would go into periods of fits of just wanting to go all over the place, to just kind of staring off into space and not actually being able to move. So this is what he ended up suffering from and died. He only had the symptoms for about 5 days before he passed. But the interesting thing about it is there are people who have survived this illness, but sadly enough, they end up in that catatonic state for the rest of their lives. Fortunately, it's not something that we see very often anymore. But this was an epidemic back in 1918 and 1930s, and we still don't know what caused it. They thought that it was a result of the Spanish flu epidemic that happened toward the end of the World War I. But they did tests on a lot of the people there that were suffering from it in the late 1910s, early 1920s. Nothing came of it. We still don't know 100 some years later. But this is going back to one of the good things that he did support was the anti-lynching bill. So I thought this was just a shocking statistic to me. So every dot represents a known lynching. I know it's a little bit dark, from the toilet earlier, but I thought it was really powerful. You see this. I think we had 17 back in between 1889 and 1921. In the state of Maryland. And so it originally passed in the House. And again, Zillman, who I was just talking about, he was the only one from Maryland in the House of Representatives who supported this bill. Unfortunately, it did not pass in the Senate. And the logic for it was, which I think is absolutely nuts, is that, oh, well, if we don't have something in place to control them, then, it's just going to go rampant, especially if you're in the South. So, yeah, that was only 100 some years ago as well. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, more happy, yay, all right. So Clara Barton and the Choo Choo Train. I like to end on this one, just because I feel like it's a very whimsical one. People usually get the biggest reaction out of this one. So I'll let you guys look at this picture at first. You guys notice anything out of the ordinary? And I will tell you, this is the Clara Barton house down in Glen Echo Park. So if you notice toward the front, there are like train tracks. Yeah. So let me get a little bit more into the background of Clara Barton and Glen Echo Park. So Clara Barton, as I'm sure you might know, she was the founder of the American Red Cross. Amazing woman. She did a lot of philanthropic and outreach work internationally throughout her life, even into her 70s and 80s. When the Galveston, Texas hurricane happened in 1900, she was 78 years old and went down to support the relief there. She also went down to support Cuba around the same time. She traveled to Russia to speak at a Red Cross international conference when she was 83 years old in 1905. And around that same time that all this was happening, she was living in this house that was created for her by the Baltzley twin brothers who opened Glen Echo Park. So when they were opening up Glen Echo, they originally said, and this is a fun perspective, I like to think of it as, imagine you're trying to get, your startup business running, and you decide to use influencer marketing. You want to get a famous person to, really hype up your brand. Really make a lot of people take notice of what you're trying to get them to come to, or what you're trying to sell. So they reached out to Clara Barton because she was a beloved figure in the American public, and they said, hey, well, we have this house that's right next to Glen Echo Park that we want to build for you. Will you come live in it, and then kind of be our celebrity guest, a permanent celebrity guest? And so she initially moved up here. She lived up here for a couple years. Eventually found it a little bit tedious, the back and forth between Glen Echo going into Washington, D.C., but then she ended up moving to Washington, D.C. for 5 years, came back up in 1897 when there was a trolley line built up there, and at 76 years old, she was like, all right, this is fantastic. I don't have to travel all the way down to D.C. to do my Red Cross activities. And when she came back up, she actually moved the headquarters up here. And so everything is running pretty smoothly. She had a lot of the staff and volunteers who were helping out with her relief efforts living in the house with her. And then along came a man named Alonzo Shaw. And Alonzo Shaw was the successor to owning the land that the Baltzley brothers had. So Alonzo Shaw came along and he said, hey, I really want to expand this park. And you know what this park really needs? a hotel for all of my guests. So he went to Clara Barton, who I believe was in her mid-80s at the time. And he goes up to Clara Barton and says, hey, I know that, you're this American legend and everything, but would you mind if I turned your Clara Barton house into a hotel for my amusement park? And she was very kind and respectful from what I read of her communications with Mr. Shaw. She said, I know I have really important work that I like to do here. And so she was very polite about it, but he did not take that well at all. So as he was developing the amusement park, that leads us to our picture. So he technically owned the land around Clara Barton's house. So, hence the train. So that is part of the amusement park, going around Clara Barton's house. Imagine you're on a ride on like Sky Rush at Hershey Park, and you're going down a hill, and you're like, I think that's Monticello over there. That's the best way I can explain it. It's so wacky. So she, she was still pretty nonchalant about it. She was just like, whatever, it's just a little train. I can still do my work. And so he was like, she's still not leaving. So I guess I gotta ramp things up. So I don't have a picture of it, but the next thing that went in front of her house was a Ferris wheel. So, yeah. In most cases, those are fun things. But she had a Ferris wheel in front of her house, and then didn't budge with that. And then what he finally ended up doing was he ended up taking one of his roller coasters and actually tearing part of it down and rebuilding it so that the track went right by her second-story bedroom window. Very, very petty. Very petty. Very evil, yes. But there are diary entries of her just going, it's so nice. I mean, the lights are kind of bright and it's a little noisy. And then she just writes, but it doesn't really bother me at all. You don't know, which is kind of funny. She's not here obviously to ask, what did you mean by that? Were you just being, your kind self, or were you maybe just being a little snarky, a little petty when you were saying that? So what eventually ended up happening, and this is one of my favorite parts of the story, is Alonzo Shaw spent so much money renovating his park and redoing everything to try and get her out of there, to invest in, basically taking the house from her and turning it into a hotel. He actually went bankrupt. And guess who he went to for financial help? Oh, yeah. Yeah. So she respectfully declined the request, and Alonzo Shaw ended up out of there in disgrace, and she ended up passing away peacefully when she was 90 years old in that house in 1912. I think that's a great spot to leave it for now. If I can go in and talk about my book a little bit. So again, it's called Hidden History of Montgomery County, Maryland. So for more stories about Kensington and beyond, I do have something controversial to say. Kensington is not featured in this book right here. I know, audible gasp. And that is because I'll tell you all the story. Toward the end of it, I was communicating with a 94-year-old woman. There's a chapter in there which I do a lot of stories about people who have lived in the county for over 80, 90 years and their reflections. There's a woman who grew up here. She now lives in Clarksburg that I wanted to get in touch with, and we were going back and forth. And then right around the deadline when I was supposed to get her piece, we lost contact, unfortunately. So that is why there is no Kensington segment in there. It's nothing personal, I promise. Especially after going through this presentation, you all have so much rich history, and I'm looking forward to making it first priority for my next book. But I wanted to be transparent with you all. So We have 6 sections of 33 chapters telling the wildest, shocking, and most inspiring stories our county has to offer. And even if you're not from Kensington, you might have grown up around here, or you might have known someone who grew up in another community in the area, or you grew up in Kensington and went to a store or went to an amusement park in another part of the county, went to visit relatives and want to relive some of those older memories. Yeah, this is great for a coffee table, a birthday holiday gift, for a local book club read. I've done a book club event before, and it was one of my favorite events that I ever did. It got a lot of great questions. Gets a lot of people hyped up about their local history, and then they talk amongst themselves, and then they start sharing stories about their own lives growing up, and they start bouncing ideas off of each other. So. Yeah, that's one of the main uses I would recommend it for as well. But yeah, otherwise, I think I'm done with the main part of it. Thank you so much for being great listeners.
So he was gracious enough to spend some time on Kensington, while his book does not. But so let's say, if I were to ask you the 5 things that you wrote about in the county that you thought were the most fascinating, what would you tick off as the 5 fun things?
Ooh,
Not
okay.
Kensington, rest of the county.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. So yeah. Question was 5 most fascinating things that I could highlight about the book. I would say yes, as you mentioned in the front row, the toilet one, that was just funny to me. It's the ones that get the emotional reaction out of you, whether it's shock or just laughter, or just feeling a bit sad for what our county used to be and what it might still be. Like there's one. There's one about, obviously there's the toilet one. There is one that I did on a true crime story that happened in our county. It's a man who thought that his wife was cheating on him with a neighbor, so he went and blew up his neighbor's house, and boom, bop, bing, he became the last man to be hanged in Montgomery County in 1921 for those crimes. Oh, sorry, that was in Germantown. I was in Germantown that happened. Yeah. Yeah. So that's one. Trying to think if there's another one. Yeah. Oh, Blair Witch Project. I interviewed the director of the Blair Witch Project, which was really awesome. He's actually from Langley Park, Tacoma Park area. So he has a lot of fun memories of going to places like the Wheaton Mall and going to the arcade there, and getting a lot of his scary movie and scary TV lore from hanging out around here, which is why he came back to the area and decided to film the Blair Witch Project, which is it's a very renowned found footage horror movie for those of you who haven't watched it. Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's some other ones. There's some ones. There's some older ones that get into hidden history of Montgomery County, like how we started again. Like I alluded to, how it was founded in 1776 by a bunch of people, including Zadok Magruder, Thomas S. Wooten, some of our high school names lumped in there. And then I'm trying to think, there was another one that I had in mind. The pet cemetery up in Aspen Hill. Yes.
Well, let's open it for questions and comments, or if you have a story you think he should know about, pass that on. Front row.
I had a couple of questions. One was, did you do anything about, write anything about the theater in the round, Shady Grove Music Fair?
It's so funny you mentioned that, because usually I was getting ready for you to say something that isn't in the book. I actually have a whole chapter on it, so I'm very glad you brought that up.
I heard about it and then started doing all this research.
Yeah.
People, like all my older friends and my siblings and stuff.
Yeah, no, and they had famous comedians come there. They had like Lily Tomlin come there. I think they had the Jackson 5 come there. Tina Turner was there. Oh, you're kidding! Oh my goodness. Yeah. We're talking about the Shady Grove Music Fair for those of you on Zoom. I don't know if you heard that, but that was located in Rockville, right by where Shady Grove and 270 meet currently, and now it's a lot of office buildings. But they also had a lot of high school graduations there, from what I've gathered.
The other was just a follow-up, the Garrett Library and Rocking House, you mentioned them, are either still?
So the Garrett Park Library and the Rocking Horse, off the top of my head, I don't actually know off the top of my head. I'm sure that's just a quick Google. But I recognize that. I mean, I recognize the names. I mean, obviously Garrett Park, but then there's Rocking Horse Road, just over off of Randolph. Yeah. But yeah, it's a good question.
When did Alonzo start building that amusement park for Glen Echo?
Yeah, so Alonzo, I don't know, and the ownership it's a little hazy on who exactly started it, but I know it started around the late 1890s, like right around the time that she moved in here full time, and so I think he might have been the second owner, if I remember correctly, but those are the ones. The Baltzley brothers stand out to me. Because they were the ones who originally founded Glen Echo, and then Alonzo Shaw, for obvious reasons.
Is Claire Barton's house still there?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Did they keep that one roller coaster that went second floor?
No. I'm sure I would have enjoyed my visit there in second grade a lot more.
Isn't the Claire Barton House still open for visitors?
Yes, it is. Yes. It's part of the National Park Service now. Mm-hmm. Yes. Sure.
What is on the front of the book? What is that picture of the cars?
Sure. So that is the Rockville Fair. So they used to have drag racing going around right by where Richard Montgomery High School is, and I believe that picture was taken in about 1923. That was a precursor to the Montgomery County Fairgrounds that we have over in Gaithersburg today. Yes, in the front. Yes.
Who's the contact that you said from Kensington that you no longer, you lost the contact with?
Yeah. Her last name was Snowden. I think it was Joanne Snowden is her name. Yes. Yeah. Hi, Fran. Good to see you.
Story with Brian for Montgomery Community Media, so if you get a chance, you can see some of the stories on YouTube. I was wondering, I heard that maybe the Clara Barton house was haunted. Did you ever hear that story?
I did a whole chapter on ghosts. I unfortunately didn't get around to investigating Claire Barton in terms of ghosts, but now I've got something to look into. I mean, I imagine, because I've read about some pretty angry ghosts, but I don't think, I don't imagine she would be one unless it was one of the people who was, convalescing in there. Yes, that's a good point. It might have been Alonzo who was the angry ghost in there.
The story was that she would appear in maybe she was looking for the roller coaster. She would appear in one of the second-story windows, and people, as after she passed, obviously, and people would see her.
Oh. So people would see her in one of the second-story windows, you said? Okay, all right. No roller coaster, though. Yes.
There's another one on Zoom that says, what is the history of the large historic buildings near the Noyes Library? I'm not sure.
The large historic library.
Yeah, that would be the Warner House on Warner Circle now, which is currently undergoing renovation as a preservation project and will be reopening with a condominium community. So that is Brainerd Warner's original home. Brainerd Warner actually designed the street layouts in town and was quite active in hustling real estate sales to his friends in DC. Started out as a summer community, and then when the train and the trolley ran, it became more year-round. But that Warner Mansion or Hadley House is kind of the iconic large piece of real estate in the county or in town.
Thank you, Kate.
There's a story about a bridesmaid who
Oh, yes. I did say I was going to get to this one. Yes, so this actually is a ghost story, because I know we've been talking a little bit about ghosts. So there was a woman, and her name was Elizabeth Wilson. And in 1919, her brother got married, and at the wedding reception, I think something happened where, and this was in 1919, at the wedding reception, something happened where the bride's veil caught on fire because it was passing through a candle, and the candle lit the veil on fire. And so the veil caught on fire. The bride panicked and she threw it on the ground, but she didn't look where she was throwing, and she accidentally threw it onto her now sister-in-law, who was a bridesmaid. And unfortunately, she caught on fire and passed away from that. Crazy, I know, yeah. And it happened right over in the Layhill neighborhood of Silver Spring. So there is, was it Layhill? Sorry, no, she was from Layhill. I believe it happened over in Woodside neighborhood of Silver Spring. But there is a story about a couple that recently moved into the house in Woodside where she resided, and they recall feeling a very chilling presence, and they noticed some other strange occurrences there with some of the doors and windows, and they're thinking that it might be Elizabeth's ghost still haunting after 107 years.
I promised Brian I was going to ask a question, which I like to ask all historian authors. Where do you get your research? You know, he found a lot of disparate, interesting things that, you know, he manages to connect the dots in terms of the relationship to history in the county. But talk about your research.
So my research process for this book, there are a lot of great in-person and online resources that you can use, and a lot of them I used for the same as my genealogical resources, which is what made there not be as much of a learning curve going into, I guess, researching for this book, because I had already found a lot of really valuable information on these sources and knew where to go. So like Library of Congress, they have a site called Chronicling America, which is a lot of free newspaper articles that you can find online. Conveniently enough, the Montgomery County Sentinel was added to their database in 2023, right around the time when I started working on the book. So that was a great help to me. Ancestry.com is another great one for census records. If I was looking for info on stuff like occupation, biographical info, when they were born, where they were born, connected me with some members there who were relatives. Like I said, for the Reinhardt School of the Deaf, Annie Reinhardt's relative, I found him on Ancestry and connected with him, and he's who provided graciously the photo that I shared with y'all today with her and Alexander Graham Bell. So you can find a lot of really cool stuff on there. Findagrave.com, they even have some bios on there. You can find out where your relatives are located and pay respects. And then as for in-person resources, some of the ones I used with the Maryland State Archives in Annapolis, and then Montgomery History, which is located in downtown Rockville off of Middle Lane, in the Jane Sween Research Library. And then there are a lot of local historical societies as well, depending on where you look, to answer your question.
One last question.
Do you have anything in the works? So you have
Oh, I was looking that way.
No, the sister-in-law survived because she threw the veil on the ground. It didn't catch fire to the rest of her clothes. So, so the bride survived. The sister-in-law was the one who did not.
Great way to start your in-law relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, let's
Oh
off
boy.
the sister-in-law. Okay, couple things. First, thank you. This has been fun, and he's going to stick around, has his book, stick around, have refreshments. Our Valiant Historical Society refreshment folks have set up in the back, so please hang out and visit. Our next in our series is on April 16th. We're taking a little different look at Montgomery history. Eileen McGuckian, who's the president of Montgomery Preservation Incorporated, is going to talk to us about the history of preservation in Montgomery County, past successes, failures, where we need to go from here in terms of preserving our landmark sites and buildings and whatnot. So she's really the preeminent preservation person in the county with a long history. And then in September, our event is going to be fabulous. I saw this presentation at the history conference last fall that Montgomery History puts on. Ralph Bouglas did a definitive history of Montgomery County. It's much, less vignettes of history and more, linear history about how the county was formed and changed and grown over time, and very entertaining. He does a lot of work in Montgomery County as a historian, is a very good presenter, so you're going to want to know about that. Between now and then is the Maryland House and Garden and Pilgrimage Kensington Tour on June 7th. Don't anybody leave without picking up one of these on the refreshment table. It's going to be a great day to celebrate our Kensington history. We're going to have some private homes and gardens open for tour. Our landmarks are going to have exhibits. We're going to have a lot going on. We'll be welcoming people from all around the state and look forward to that. Speaking of why that's important, Noyes Children's Library Foundation is the beneficiary of funds raised from this tour. The Maryland House and Garden Pilgrimage is an organization that has been in existence over 90 years, doing these tours once a year in the summer in various counties around the state. And all the proceeds benefit preservation projects. So there's a lot of important buildings and sites that have been preserved because of the monies that have been raised through this tour. So help us support Noyes and other locations in town. So on that note, I will say thank you again. Thank you. And he's going to set up.
Thank you all.